So we'll get started. I'll call this Channel 79. We're going to go. I'll call this regular meeting of the Operations Planning Committee for Thursday, September 26th to order. And we will, good morning, David.
Hi, David.
We will take up the review of the July 25th OPC meeting minutes first. So give you a moment to take a look at those. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay,
Just one correction.
Sure.
State representative, members of the House of Representatives tried unsuccessfully to veto 3 of the governor's bills. I think it should be to override the veto of the governor's bills.
Okay, I'm sorry, so what is that again? So,
Here it is. It's just at the end there. It says members of the House of Representatives tried unsuccessfully to override the veto
Oh, okay.
of 3 of the governor's bills.
okay. Motion on the floor to approve as amended. Second by John. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Great. Thank you very much. Okay, move on to discussion of matters. I'll kick it off this morning. First, I hope that the school year is going well for everybody. Look forward to your report, Tara. It's really fantastic to see Dr. Adley everywhere in town. He's been received very well. He was at the Human Service Planning Council meeting yesterday, so that's terrific. And I understand congratulations are in order for you, Tara. You've been named to the Connecticut Advisory Council for School Administrator Professional Standards.
Yes.
So that's wonderful.
I didn't know news had spread, but thank you very
Yes,
much.
Congratulations.
congratulations.
Awesome.
And
Yeah.
Joanne will be well served by your service on that committee. And would love to hear in your report if you could tell us how it's going with the SRO at Middlesex Middle School. I assume everybody has seen in the news that there was a notable arrest of an RTM member. Certainly an arrest is not a conviction of a crime, but it is an issue of interest, I think, for all of us, since many of us have been copied on the emails in question in this case. So I just want to publicly acknowledge that. And certainly we'll be keeping abreast of the legal proceedings through our attorney. Business as usual for the First Selectman's Office. We have a lot going on. The Oxbridge Elementary School Building Committee is hard at work and moving forward very well. And the Pear Tree Point Building Committee is moving forward. There are certainly some public sentiments out there about whether it's a good or an unwise project for this community. And we look forward to the public process around that to help make that determination. The committee is doing a very good job. They're going to be putting together a whole series of FAQs to put information out in the public that is truthful. I think there's a lot of misinformation that is being propagated right now, not in a malicious intent by any means, but as we know how these projects go, it will be important to get factual information out to the public. So that will be coming shortly.
It was similar with the building, getting the new high school built. There was a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah,
And it was important
yeah.
to get the correct information out there.
And
factual.
we understand there's a lot of passion on the parts
Right.
of people who are at this moment opposed to the project. But there are also sentiments of the public, people who are very supportive. It's just the nature of the beast, it seems, that those who are opposed are the ones who vocally participate, and the ones who are supportive don't really come out and share. But it's our responsibility to get out into the public and to really understand if people want this project. So that's where we are. The committee's doing a great job in the face of that adversity, though, I would say. And then the last thing for me, and hopefully I can get some feedback from all of you today, is your contributions to the Board of Selectmen's efforts to create a community value statement. And with that, I will take any of your questions, or we can move on to Tara.
The Board of Ed did have questions on it, so I can give my report and we can go back to that, or we
Great,
can
yeah.
stay there, up to you.
Sure.
So schools opened successfully, and with continued improvement on transportation. That's always a hot button issue at the beginning of the school year. So some of the steps we took last year to improve that communication included getting out earlier with information this year. And so we've had a much better kind of community response, which has been great. We love to see improvements. Dr. Adley is a welcome addition to the district, and he has been everywhere. And we're really happy to see how engaged he is, and quite frankly, how much time he is able to spend in the schools. We think it's great that parents and kids and families really get to know him, and he's kind of ingrained in their everyday experience, because that's important to us. We also, and I let you know last meeting, that we had hired Rich Rudall as our new Director of Finance. We've actually now been able to experience Rich's first reports, which I think you all got in the packets we also sent out. He's got some different ways of doing things, but I think it really helps answer questions and clarify things. So I think the board was very happy with some of the detail and recommendations he's made so far, just to kind of help explain all of what we do from a financial end. So again, he's been a very welcome success, and we threw him right into the process, including teacher negotiations. So he hasn't really had a moment to sit, but he's kept pace, which is great. The Oxford Building Committee, which John is on and Jamie referenced, is doing really great from our perspective. We've been able to modify our ed specs based on needs and conversations. The report that came back to me is the state said this plan looked great, and while not an official statement, they could find no fluff in it. And so, while not an official statement, it's a very nice statement to hear. I think everyone around this table can appreciate it. But they did say it's some of the best, both ed specs and planning they've seen, which is a credit to Kip and Duke, who are running that committee. I will say I was happy to receive this appointment and have another voice at Darien at another table in Hartford, and if there's anything that needs to come back to Darien, I'm happy to share you all. It was yesterday, so I don't have anything to share with you yet, but when I do, I'm happy to bring it back to this table and also to the board. The board did discuss the value statement. Mm-hmm. We had some questions because we'd like to be to contribute, but we wanted to know the timeline, and I know originally you had said before the next election you were looking to do it. Yeah. And we were kind of trying to understand what the value statement would be tied to and what's the intent of it. Mostly because we are about to engage in a strategic planning process. Mm-hmm. And to do that, we really want to be able to go out and look at everything, and we're a little worried that we were tying something directly right before we began that process. We're happy to look at our school mission statement or philosophy and contribute that to remain consistent. But we got into some really great ideas of board members, different words, different sentiments, all of which were great. The concern would be, do we do that now right before our strategic planning process? So if you have any kind of timelines or what the end goal of this value statement is, that would be helpful to us. I did refer everyone back to your email you had sent out originally on the topic, but if you had anything to add, I'm happy to bring it back to the board to help clarify some of their questions.
Yep. So timeline, we were certainly hoping to create this statement with the boards that have been in place for the last 2 years, out of respect to them and the hard work that they've done as their contribution to. Generally, let me say that the initiative to create a community value statement is really an attempt to have a short statement that really brings us all together, that ties us together under some common principles, that when we do our work, we keep mindful of those general principles, which I think we do anyway. The Board of Selectmen has a mission statement. The Board of Education has a mission statement. What I can say, we don't want to get bogged down in process, certainly with this initiative, or at least I don't. We can be flexible on the timing, but if the Board of Ed's mission statement isn't going to change, that might be a great place to start as a contribution. But really, this is a way as a thread of something to tie us together in terms of values and principles when we do our work every day. It's not uncommon for communities to have a value statement. I've provided some samples of those to the Board of Selectmen. If you like them, I can get them to you too. Interesting that you guys are doing a strategic plan. Susan Marks brought to our attention that the town of Madison actually did a joint strategic plan with their Board of Ed, their Board of Finance, and their Board of Selectmen together. And from that came some of these ideas of common core values and principles. So, you know, that's not something our community has ever considered, but certainly is food for thought. So, you know, flexibility is what I'd like to say. You know, we don't want to create a statement and then change it tomorrow, but it can be dynamic. You know, something changes dramatically through your strategic planning process, we can respond to that. But again, I think you understand the intent of the process.
Sure. I will bring this back to everyone at our next meeting and kind of
Okay.
update them. I think there was one, and I just want to clarify because I do really think I understand the intent.
Yeah.
But there was a part of the questions that came up where when we talked about using this value statement to tie it to future goals and objectives. Am I hearing more that you're looking for a general kind of tying community together rather than tying directly to goals and objectives? Or-
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. The statement would be appropriately broad so that in theory, any of our goals and objectives would fit nicely into it, but it's certainly not intended to inhibit or limit the work of any board that, you know, is in the town. That's not the intent at all.
Okay, great. I will bring this back to everyone. Hopefully that answers questions and let you know in the meantime.
Perfect. Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Yeah. Okay. Seth?
Representative town meeting had its first fall meeting, kickoff. Mostly bookkeeping, if I can use that term. Just cleaning up odds and ends, financial. Also, we had a briefing on we're starting to have briefings on what's going on in town to kind of keep everybody up to steam, because there's plenty, as Jamie has enumerated. We've got some, Jeremy's been great in getting a group together here for the October meeting.
That's October 22nd,
That's right.
and that'll be Federal Realty representatives. David Genovese will be there. And did we also line up the Palmers? Do you want me to double
Oh, I
check?
think, yeah, we definitely would.
Okay, let me double check and confirm
Great.
that everyone's on board for,
Yeah.
8
I think
o'clock that night.
Yeah, I think that would
I'll call.
that'd be terrific.
okay?
So there's a lot of briefing going on, but I think it keeps everybody up to speed. I'm thinking about how to do the community value statement. I'm looking at 100 members, you know. How do we get something a statement out of this? And I'm going to dump it right on the lap of the Rules Committee. Say, okay, you know, how do you want to approach this, folks? And it's on the table, so we'll make a run at it. Just some administrative things. Joanne Hennessy, who served as vice chair of the Rules Committee for a number of years, has moved out of Darien. So she is no longer on the RTM. So we added another load onto the shoulders of Lois Schneider. And so she,
Very capable shoulders.
Yes. So she's now in addition to being my replacement at any meeting, she is also the vice chair of the Rules Committee. It's two separate things we discovered in reading the fine print in the town code of ordinance and the charter. So that's pretty much what's going on there. We have some other administrative resolutions that we have to pass that will come up in October. But a lot of it will be a briefing on what's going on with current projects to keep the town up to date on what's happening, you know.
It's a great idea. Okay, anything else for Seth? Jeremy, thank you for being here to stand
Sure.
in for your
Sure,
commission.
it's quiet, but I think it's going to be heating up with some of the projects you mentioned earlier. P&Z's going to deal with their referral on the Weed Beach improvements, which are getting some outside funding. I think that's going to go to the RTM on October 22nd.
Okay.
Is my understanding is the gift. Is that
Yep.
the sense you get, Jamie?
Yes.
So that'll be one other item on your agenda for October 22nd. And I guess what we'll do, Seth, on that meeting is before I tell these gentlemen how long their presentation should be, I'll wait to see what that agenda looks like. I don't want to tell them they each have a half hour, but your agenda gets a little long. So,
A half an hour for the RTM is an eternity.
yeah.
I-
So I'll
I
tell them
would-
about 15 minutes.
Yeah, that'll be just
15 minutes
fine.
each.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. As Jamie mentioned, once the plans are done for Pear Tree, they'll start going through the approvals process. We're probably looking at Zoning Board of Appeals in November, Architectural Review Board November, P&Z December or January, if things go well. We're still reaching out to FEMA. We've had numerous meetings with FEMA to make sure what's being designed is appropriate and meets all the flood regulations. Similarly, Oxford School is working on plans which will hit the permitting process, I'm guessing November, January, February, that time frame. Work with the local land use boards as you finalize the plans for that. I know they're working on the traffic study right now. And P&Z is going to meet this upcoming Tuesday, October 1st, to talk about the community values, and they hope to get you something before the end of October.
Thank you. Okay. Just to go back to the RTM meeting for a moment in October, knowing that the November and December meetings really, there's limited availability to do business in those two meetings.
Right.
So I'm not sure what the lineup is for issues to come before the RTM. It could be a long
Long
meeting in
meeting.
October.
I know Ed has a couple things
Yeah.
that he's going to try to see if he can squeeze on, because it's a 3-month gap till the next meeting.
Correct.
Yep.
Right.
Lovely.
Yeah, yeah. And I know we're all very eager for public presentation from the developers, which we haven't heard for a while. But I would recommend that the business portion of the meeting happen first, so that
Yeah.
They don't get, yeah.
those issues get their due process.
Well, let me look at how that is. You might be able to slide it in on some other meetings too. Let's see what the length looks like.
Okay,
Yeah.
yep, you never know. Things are still developing.
I
think, for
get
October.
emails every day, oh, what's this that's just arrived? You know?
Yep.
So,
I'll let the presenters know that if the agenda's long, we're going to push them to another meeting.
yeah, we could. On something like that, where it's not formal business, you know, they could still give briefings. We have State of the Town, and you can easily toss those in to something like that, you know, so. All right, let's see how it goes.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for Jeremy? Jeremy, do you want to give a little briefing on Old Town Hall Homes, or now called the Royal?
It's moving along. You can see if you've driven by, the steel's starting to go up. They had the foundation done. You can see they're out there every day working on getting it moved along. Jamie and I talked yesterday about the expected completion date. We are optimistic it's sometime next year. Estimates vary depending on who you talk to. If the weather continues to be sunny and 70 degrees every day, they will crank right through this. But sometime next year, I would estimate between, let's call it August and November. But if we have a light winter, but I know people will become very anxious, and Ally and her group downstairs get calls all the time about people looking to move in and how quickly can I get back. And certainly that will heat up more as the building looks completed. In a situation like that, the building will look done, but there's still a lot of work to do on the inside. So this time next year, plus or minus.
How many units?
It used to be 30, and now it's going to be 55 units, 53 one-bedroom, 2 two-bedroom units.
Thank you.
We want to thank publicly the Darien Fire Department, who has agreed and has been hosting our paramedics, because they've been displaced out of 701, their new home in Darien. So we're going to be very eager to make sure we get the paramedics back into their place as soon as we can. Okay, moving on to Terry.
A couple of things. I attended the kickoff for the 100 years of women's ability to vote on behalf of Jamie. It was, the invitation went to all municipal leaders, town historians, and anybody could be a substitute. And it was quite a celebration. Annie Lamont spoke very, very well. Denise Merrill is co-chairing it, and along with Susan Beisowitz, and it was galvanizing. There were about 100 people there, and we celebrated on August 26th of 2020, and there will be celebrations throughout the state documenting that and celebrating that. So along with the 2020 that we saw yesterday at Human Services Planning Council, it's going to be a lot of celebrations. So it just reminds us it's an opportunity to reach out to people who aren't registered to vote and say, this is important. You know, it's critically important. So the other issue that came up over the last couple of weeks, I'm sure you've all read about it, was the expansion. The Department of Revenue Services interpreted the statutory language of the budget that increased the restaurant tax. So in the budget, the restaurant tax was increased to 7.35%. The sales tax remains generally at 6.35%, but the restaurant tax went to 7.35%. Now, not everyone supported the budget. It definitely was, there was a pretty much along party lines split on the budget for a number of reasons, and that was one of them. However, DRS has since retracted the expansion, which went on to include things like boxed lettuce, granola bars in supermarkets, things in supermarkets that the statutory language did not necessarily mean to include. So we are asking, a number of legislators, both sides are asking for us to go into special session and further refine the statutory language on that. So there's clarity around it. So stay tuned on that.
That's it?
It's otherwise fairly quiet, but that was
For
loud
now.
enough that
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
we don't need, you know, the point, good leadership is not creating a lot of firestorms.
Great.
So,
You said something that reminded me, I was very remiss in not giving an update on the workings of the 2020
It's
Bicentennial
awesome.
Committee. They presented yesterday to the Human Service Planning Council in an endeavor to encourage all community organizations, regardless of who you are, you know, athletic organizations, nonprofits, faith communities, etc., to all consider having an activity that helps celebrate the 2020 bicentennial. Al Miller and Maggie McIntyre are driving the committee. They're doing an excellent job. There's information on the website. There's going to be a series of 4 formal events throughout the year, next year. And then we're hoping to feed into a community calendar the activities of any organizations that want to present. We're particularly eager to find out what other organizations in Darien are also celebrating notable anniversaries. There are several that we know of so far. So it's going to be a very exciting year. There's information online. There was a public information meeting last night here in Town Hall about it, which was covered by TV 79, so you can go and find on demand the presentation, which I think is fun and exciting, and then there will be 2 more public information meetings about the planned celebration coming up over the next several months, so those will be well publicized. But the committee's doing an incredible job, and we're very much looking forward to celebrating our 200th birthday next year.
Yeah, Al Miller gave a presentation to the RTM and was well received.
very, very professional
Yeah.
and a lot of depth.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Okay, are there any other issues to be discussed this morning here at OPC?
John?
Money bags.
Sorry,
I was
John.
just being quiet there.
Yes, I'm going to send
I
the "you
apologize.
ignored me" invoice to the first selectman, and it's going to be costly. Well, actually, in
boy.
exchange,
Blame it on my cold.
she talked about things to celebrate. I will have actually lived in Darien 15 years next summer, so if you want to add that to the celebration.
We will add that.
The Board of Finance will authorize profligate spending for that element of the celebration. So a couple things. The budget for fiscal 19, which ended in June, ended up with a significant surplus driven by return of some funds that we were not actually using, that the RTM, actually F&B under Jack Davis's leadership, those guys cleaned that up and pulled out about $420,000 in funds that had just sat there for a long time. Board of Education came in with a surplus of $336,000. And interestingly, we have been worried about fund balance for a while, which as a reference is the town's reserves, should we ever need them. And we'd set a floor for that fund balance of about 12% of budgeted revenues. And because of this surplus and general good financial results, we're now up over 17% for fund balance. And so one of the things we're thinking about doing is whether we should draw fund balance down, because a high number like that essentially says that we have taxed citizens in this fiscal year more than we should have, or as a general matter. And so one of the things we're looking at is whether some of the upcoming expenditures for a variety of capital projects, whether we should simply pay those out of fund balance rather than adding to our bonding. So we're going to think about that and do that prudently. One thing I've asked for is to see a forecast of fund balance over the next 5 years, just to make sure that if we do something like that, we don't have the prospect of, say, 2 or 3 years down the road of simply having to add to the tax burden because fund balance has fallen short. So as a general matter, though, we're in extremely good shape with regard to town finances as the result of last year's performance. Next OPC meeting, I'll present you a little analysis of sort of the sources of that surplus, and that'll be something that we should all just collectively take into account for the budget process next year. One issue that it's raised is just the accuracy of budgeting. Well, it's always good to have a surplus. The reality is whether it's a big surplus or a big deficit, it just calls into, I think question's the wrong word, but it just is a reminder that we should look at that process and try to be a bit more precise and get a budget that's spot on. There's always going to be variability in that, but we're going to take a close look at that in the run-up to the budget process this year.
What's the aggregate surplus this year?
So it is,
It's 7.
so I think the aggregate surplus is something at 2.7 million. I'll get the exact figures, and the amount that we're going to end up returning to fund balance is about 2.3.
So we'll say we had a little bit of a conversation on this with our surplus this year being 0.34 of the budget. And could we get any tighter? 0.34 is pretty good on the budget, but if we can look and see and do, and Rich is open to helping us with that process.
Speaking of which, I know Dr. Adley's trying to be everywhere, but it looks like he's literally trying to be everywhere and actually asked to come speak to the Board of Finance. Apparently in his prior roles, he has with some regularity come to the local Board of Finance just to talk about what he's doing and to engage in dialogue or discussion. And so I would love to formally invite him to do that, maybe to come to our October meeting, but that'll be terrific. I'll send him an email and of course copy you, inviting him to do that as he sees fit, but having him come and get to know members of the Board of Finance and having him learn a little bit about how we've done budgeting in the past, and just having an open dialogue to get to know him. He really is a ubiquitous figure, and to get to know him and sort of some of his priorities and make it a two-way dialogue. I'd love to see that, but he's terrific, and we look forward to building our relationship with him. On the community values statement, the Board of Finance took that up at their last meeting last week. A little bit of controversy in the discussion about whether even a community value statement was needed. I personally think that it's a good idea. I'd love to see the samples that you mentioned, and so maybe you could send those around to the board chairs just to give us an idea. My own view is that if we're going to do something like this, it should be something that's enduring. I agree with your point that it's not a statement that you'd like to say it needs to be edited every year. And the other one would be that it was a non-obvious, right? So buy low, sell high, eat right, stay fit type things are all kind of obvious. It also, in my view, ought to have a little bit of a challenge to it that says we've made an explicit choice to do something and we're going to have to work on that. So it could be non-obvious things like the most important one for me is just this notion of collaboration. It's pervaded many of our interactions across all the boards for a very long time, and anything we can do to even codify that as a principle for the town, I think is a good reminder to all current boards as well as the people in the future who are in these roles to say, you know what, our values, our community value statement says that this is something that we need to take seriously, and to have that be an enduring principle going forward. I think in terms of the Board of Finance, we might throw in something around financial prudence in there, but whatever we give to you is going to be something that feels enduring and yet has that challenge to it that says, when you read it, it's a reminder that says, you know, this is a value of the town. We really need to be paying attention to that value when we make these financial decisions. But I will try to make sure whatever we send to you meets those kinds of standards. Oxford.
I appreciate that, John, and I think you are understanding the spirit of the project. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. I tried. Oxford's Building Committee, so just everybody's kind of given an update on that. They're entering the schematic design phase now that the modified Board of Education specs have been approved. And so that continues to move along with alacrity. One thing that we're going to adopt from the Public Works building process is that we created a template that allows you to keep very close track of the budget. One of the things that I want to be able to answer at all times with this group, or even the public should have an answer to at all times, is where are we on this project versus budget? And so this essentially allows us to keep track of the various line items that are part of that budget, take a look at change orders, and anything like that that might sort of affect where we are in the process versus our budget. And so being able to answer that question with a fresh perspective, anytime anybody asks it, I think will be the purpose of that, but we're going to create that for this project just so we can all keep track of the finances. I know as a Board of Finance member, I'm actually in charge of keeping fluff out of the project, so that's my official title. But this
Fluff
template will be one of
master.
those things. Sorry?
Fluff master, that would be?
Fluff master, I'm hoping to get to the master status. I'm still sort of a Padawan, but we're working on it.
What's the total number right now? What is it, what's the school,
Well,
what's the total budget?
So this, part of this process will be to sort of line all that out. The authorization was for $63 million, but we need to go through the design process to actually get to a number that says this is what we're going to build to. But in the run-up to that, we're going to be creating this template to keep track of it. I guess the only other thing to say is we have two Board of Finance members who are retiring this year. Jamie McLaughlin, who will have served 8 years on the Board of Finance, and I think is the second most tenured person after me. He is stepping down, as well as Diana McGuire. Both are not running for re-election, and we will certainly celebrate their contributions in due course, but it's been a real pleasure to have both of them on the board, and I certainly will miss the good senator's comments and style as a key member of the Board of Finance, but both of them have been absolutely terrific, and I think the town owes them a debt of gratitude.
I agree.
Yeah.
So that's it for me.
Jamie, John
Yes.
brought up one question that was asked, so I know it'll come back to me next meeting. We had two members ask, when we contribute, or if we're able to contribute these value statements, are they then edited as a group, or is each statement, what I was really asking is, are we providing a direct quote, or will they be edited? I assume there has to be some editing
Yeah.
to make it all flow together, but I
Yes.
just want to be able to answer that.
The Board of Selectmen will take the input, will distill it down into a statement that we will then provide back to the respective boards for your edits, comments, concurrence.
Great, thank
Yeah,
you.
my assumption is this really is a Board of Selectmen, first selectmen statement of the community's values that you really, as that particular board, need to drive. And so our objective is simply to contribute to your thinking.
Correct, but we want you to approve of the final product.
Great, I just want to be able to answer. I know it'll come back. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, any other business this morning? No? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. John?
So moved.
Second, Seth, second.
Did you approve the?
We did
We did.
already. All those in favor? Great, have a good day.